part in a nation's farewell to some of its soldiers who died in battle. Here from the ramparts of the General Post Office, within touching distance of the statue from which first flew our national flag at the moment of the nation's birth, we look down on the nation's Champs-Élysées, the road along which passed our heroes and those who make history. O'Connell Street. At the moment, Number 1 Army Band is leading the funeral procession of the 9 men of Ireland who died in the Congo. They are approaching in slow march and have already reached Abbey Street. They are playing Chopin's Funeral March and are followed by a company from the 2nd Infantry Battalion. The company is moving in column of 3 with arms reversed. As we look down on the crowds who have gathered to fringe this processional route, and these are the greatest crowds that I have ever seen for any occasion here in O'Connell Street, we cannot but associate the man whose death we today commemorate with this city of Dublin, whose company of the 33rd Infantry Battalion was the one which was inflicted with this tragedy. We cannot but realize that in the grim months and the chaos of the Congo, these 9 men on duty or at rest always carried vividly in their minds a picture of the country and the city they had left behind, their homes and this O'Connell Street, perhaps in a wintry sun like this one. But for these men whom we today salute in death, this was to be their return. In a moment, the Army Band will be coming near the General Post Office, and then we are going to let our microphones down there in Princess Street pick up the funeral march as this funeral procession moves past the General Post Office. Jones, speaking from a building directly opposite the GPO. The head of this sad cortege has just passed the main portico of the building and is nearing the pillar. Today, as all Dublin and all Ireland mourns, 8 of the men of the 33rd A Company are nearing the end of the sad journey that started on the dusty track near Niemba in the Congo many days ago. Just around the corner, John Batchelor's Walk, a trailer bearing the body of the leader of the ambush platoon, Lieutenant Gleason, such a happy man in life that he was known as Glee to his friends. His trailer is drawn by a Land Rover vehicle, the same type of vehicle as the one in which the lieutenant and his men set out from Niemba for their appointment with destiny. Their relatives and their country have taken their death bravely, but with a tear and a thought of the future as it might have been. And no part of Ireland has taken it more to heart than Dublin, to which falls the honour of giving them a last great send-off. It looks as if all the people of Dublin are down there in the street in front of where I'm standing, and all the people of County Dublin as well, and the people of many other counties too. Though I'm told that on the way to Glasnevin and at the cemetery itself, multitudes are waiting. It's easy to understand the feeling of these mourning Dubliners, because so many of the addresses of the fallen are good Dublin addresses. Terranure, Ballyfermot, Latimer Mansions, Ballycarney, Temple Ogue. The entire street, every window and every vantage point is crowded. It's a big crowd, the biggest, perhaps really the biggest Dublin has ever seen. But there's no doubt about the fact that it's a mourning crowd. There's none of the good-natured jostling and hubbub you normally associate with a big gathering. Looking down from the top of this building, I can see shop girls in headscarves, an old man with a long white beard. I see housewives, bankers, civil servants perhaps, carters, taximen. They're young and old, large and small, most of them well muffled against the cold of this November day. From my vantage point here, I can see that many people have fallen to their knees in prayer as the cortege passes. In other places where the density of the crowd makes this impossible, little children have been held up at arm's length by their parents so that they might get a view of the funeral of Ireland's heroes. The older people down there maybe are remembering other military funerals that have passed through this same O'Connell Street. Earlier this morning, when the people were getting places on the outside, I overheard 2 men talking about the big funeral in 1922 when General Michael Collins's body was borne across O'Connell Bridge and on towards Glasnevin on a tricolour draped gun carriage. And all of Dublin turned out to watch and to mourn, just as it has today. And now for another viewpoint of this cortege, back across the street to P.P. O'Reilly. Yes, well, as Carl Jones was talking, we witnessed the follow-up of that infantry company of the 2nd Infantry Battalion marching in column of 3 with their arms reversed. They were followed by representative detachments of Unforza Cosenta Actual, on Slua Muri, the Naval Reserve, representatives of Civil Defense and the old IRA. At the moment, reaching the southern end of the General Post Office building is a detachment of officers and men of the Irish Red Cross organization. Behind them, in the somber civvy suits of brown and gray and blue, are marching in slow time like the rest of the parade, representatives of the old Irish Republican Army, marching once again in column of 3 and about, I would say, 2 infantry companies strong. In the distance, I can see further people who are dressed in civilian attire. At the moment, I cannot recognize what organizations they represent, but it is an important point about this parade that it isn't just military, it's civil as well. that the people who have come here to participate in the funeral procession are not merely soldiers and sailors and airmen, but also people from civilian work, from the corporation, from the civil defense, and also in a few moments we are going to see, I understand, representatives of a new body in Dublin, the Afro-Asian Society. These are students and other people resident in Dublin and Ireland who have asked to be represented in this parade because it was in one of their countries, the Republic of the Congo, that these men of Ireland lost their lives. As Carl Jones said, this is one of the biggest crowds, if not the biggest crowds, in the history of this old O'Connell Street. Certainly within my memory, so long as I have been witnessing or even taking part in these parades, I have never seen anything to compare with it. There was a delay of, I would say, something like 20 minutes or more before the number 1 Army Band was able to round from Bachelor's Walk into O'Connell Street. The reason for that was the pressure of the crowds. They are thick by 30 deep, I would say, at the junction of Abbey Street, and by 40 to 50 deep across O'Connell Bridge. They are clambering up, as always, on the statues, but it is the mass of the people on the bridge and on the sidewalks and in the center of the street who are impressive on this day of wintry sunlight when the bonnets and the headscarves already mentioned of the ladies watching this procession are being picked out by this wintry sun which has peeped through within the last half hour from what was a bank of fog. We commemorate men who, when they clambered on board those Globemasters at Baldonnel, by their parting, brought the first tears. They needed the experience of the Congo to know it, for all tell us that the reality there would shock against the most bizarre anticipation or imagination. They knew the job they had to do to keep the peace, that the Congo might become neutralized against the danger of becoming the starting point of World War III. For Irishmen, this was a new role. The aim of the operation was the fine aim of the United Nations themselves. In New York, when the delegates of the 99 nations step out of the headquarters building, facing them across the street is a wall of granite blocks, smooth and polished and chipped in to that wall in gold letters, the aim for which these 9 men of Ireland died. It's a name taken straight from the Christian scriptures, an aim yet for the armies of the world, in the name of common humanity. They shall beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. The parade in front of me down there in O'Connell Street slowly moves through. More companies of the old Irish Republican Army, distinguished by their badges, their service medals of 1916 and the later struggle. That little company is now moving down and is followed by a company of uniformed men. This, I take it, will be the second company of infantry. It is a company from the Eastern Command Training Depot, and like the first company, which was at the head of this parade behind the army band, this company too is marching in slow, precise time. You can see them as from one side to the other, their shoulders jog along. You can see the brightness from the brass of the butts of their rifles, and you can see that they themselves realize that it's their comrades who have died in the Congo, and which they are playing an important part in commemorating. Now, the artillery company, which has rounded Bachelor's Walk into O'Connell Street, is going to be the last of the infantry marching companies, and then it's going to be followed by the band of the Southern Command. Now, for another viewpoint on this parade, I return you across the road to Carl Jones.
Just around the corner from where I stand is the Pro Cathedral, where the solemn Requiem Mass was celebrated for the Niemba dead this morning. This was a most unusual occurrence, by the way, because usually solemn Requiem Mass is celebrated in the Pro Cathedral only on the occasion of the deaths of high clergy. Well, as P.P. O'Reilly has said, the honor troops marching of the cortege are carrying their arms reversed, but forward. In the case of the officers, they carry their swords reversed. This custom, the origins of which are almost forgotten, is believed to have developed in some of the continental armies, where the halberdiers of old dropped the points of their halberds in salute. From here, I can see the silvery officers' swords glinting in the watery, wintry light. The 9 men in this cortege, the 9 men who left Ireland on the 18th of August last to serve the cause of peace in the Congo, have since traveled over 12,000 miles, including the happy, hopeful journey out and the very sad return. They saw things that before were only storybook material to them, things like bows and arrows, war cries, and charging warriors. They would have had some marvelous stories to tell their children when they returned. But now, these stories can never be told. But there will be many stories to be told by the ONUC Escort of Honor, led by Captain Donald Crowley, that returned from the Congo with the bodies. When they go back to the Congo after the funeral, they will be able to tell their comrades of the way in which Ireland said goodbye to her Niemba dead. And now, across the road yet again to P.P. O'Reilly.
Yes, well, here across the road on the portico of the General Post Office, we are looking down on this processional, this parade of the troops of the Eastern Command, of headquarters of the Eastern Command, who are marching in column of three with their arms reversed. Behind them, there is a battery of artillery. They're not with their guns or on transport of any sort. They're marching just like their comrades of the infantry. It is an important part of the contribution of the Irish Army to the operation of the United Nations in the Congo, that the forces who are serving there with the 9th Brigade are not just infantry. They comprise all corps and all service, serving, in point of fact, in infantry or transport in one way or another. The 33rd Battalion, comprising principally companies A, B, and C, was organized in A Company for Dublin soldiers, and in B Company for soldiers from the Southern Command, taking generally. And it is as a tribute to the comrades of the 9 men whom we today commemorate that we have here today, bringing up the rear of this battery of artillery, the band of the Southern Command. Southern Command marches along in slow time, I see behind them 6 men wearing the light blue berets of the United Nations operation in the Congo. Led by Captain Crowley, they include NCOs and men who come from A Company of the 33rd Battalion, the one which suffered the grievous loss of these men in the recent fighting around Niemba. The 5 NCOs and men are wearing white belts over their Irish uniforms. The blue in this sea of green stands out, the blue of their caps, and that white badge of the United Nations bearing on it the words ONU, Organisation des Nations Unies, so-called from the fact that in the Congo, French is the spoken language, and therefore the United Nations takes on those initials. Behind those 5 men and their officer are the colors, national and command, the color party. And then behind the color party, a sad scene, a scene recognized as soldier salute, and men take off their hats, and women bow and sign the cross. It is the first of the coffins. The coffin of Lieutenant Gleason. It is borne on a trailer, preceded by a jeep. On the jeep, many floral bouquets. On the coffin itself, and we see this clearly, the green, white, and orange tricolor, the cap and the sword of Lieutenant Gleason. And then, at the rear end of this cast, a floral tribute again, and beneath it, behind it, as I see it from here, once again, the light blue of the United Nations flag and its crest representing this world. Some 30 paces behind is an army truck carrying with it 2 more coffins in their lead casks. On these coffins, I see from here the caps of the men who are carried within those caskets. The bodies of Sergeant Gaynor and Corporal William Dugan. There too the floral tributes. There the flag, and there the symbol of world order for which they died, the flag of the United Nations. 30 paces behind, with an escort of 8 NCOs and men, their left arms covered with crepe, comes the next. The truck carrying the bodies of Corporal Peter Kelly and Private Gerald Killeen. I see that some of the wreaths are circular and others in the form of a cross. On the third truck, the bodies of Private Matthew Farrell and Private Michael McGuinn. There too again, the guard marching slowly on either side of the Matador truck, and on top, the 2 caskets and the 4 flags, and the floral tribute. Finally, the 4th Matador truck, the bodies of Trooper Thomas Fennell and Private Patrick Davis. Thus the 9 men who died in the Congo. As they come up to the General Post Office, the guards and the soldiers on duty along the side salute. The people look silently and quietly. This is the quietest crowd And then behind these Matador trucks come 4 more jeeps and trailers. And these jeeps carry the floral tribute, more floral tributes commemorating the men who died in the Congo. Finally, behind these 3 jeeps and their trailers, so covered with flowers, is an army truck. This will be the firing party at the graveside in Glasnevin. Later on, we shall be going over to Glasnevin to hear John Ross describe the scene there. Thus, the end of the first part of this cortege. And now come the mourners. Mourners in black cars, already 20 to 25 I see, between here and the turn at Bachelor's Walk, and many more, I'm sure, along the quay. I turn you over now, once again, to the other side of our college, facing the General Post Office, to Carl Jones.
The second band in this cortege has now almost reached opposite the Gresham, and the trailer and the Matador truck and the jeeps with the floral tribute follow behind. In other circumstances, all the bodies might have been borne on gun carriages. For these caskets, in which our dead had come back from 6,000 miles from the Congo, each weigh nearly 3/4 of a ton. The pallbearers are on ceremonial duty only. They don't bear the usual black, purple, or white palls usually associated with the funeral, because these are not used in an army funeral. That ONUC party that came back with them from the Congo, marching down there in front of the color party, they are led by Captain Donald Crowley, and the other members are Corporal Michael Colton, Corporal Patrick Anderson, Private James Kennedy, Trooper Patrick Feeney, and Private Peter Donnelly. All are wearing ordinary Army uniforms, but as C.P. O'Reilly has said, they wear the striking blue United Nations berets, and their shoulder flashes, I am told, bear the proud word, Ireland. You know, it's sad to think that these brave Irish soldiers serving the United Nations and the world met their death only 9 miles from their base at Niemba. They have since come back 6,000 miles or more from the Congo, and now they move on the last 3.5 miles towards the cemetery at Glasnevin for the final, sad burial ceremony. Up to my right at Parnell Square, across the heads of tens of thousands of mourners, I can just about make out the quick, precise movements with which the Army prepares to close this phase of its salute to our dead. As the head of the cortege arrives at the northern entrance to Parnell Square, the No. 1 Army Band and the leading company troops leave the cortege and form up on each side of the road, turning inward, and they will salute the remains as they pass, just as the Ghazi and the officers lining this route have saluted them, and just as the ordinary people have saluted them in their way by bowing their heads and by crossing themselves, and some of them, as I said, by falling on their knees in prayer. And now, back again to P.P. O'Reilly on top of the GPO.
Well, as we talk to you, across the world, people know that this is our day of mourning. They know the task of our troops is more than keeping the peace. It's letting the world know that white men and Europeans share the responsibilities of life on this planet with Africans and can work with Africans for Africa. It's our history and our unique place in the world of today that places a special responsibility on our shoulders in this matter. In America today, magazines and journals quote the words of an Irish officer in the Congo who said, "With us, the Congo may still be chaotic, but without it, it would be hell. I look down now on the cortege, which has come to a stop. I would imagine that what is now happening over in Parnell Square, that is the redeployment of the troops, would be causing a slight delay, though indeed it was very slight, because already these cars, and they're just continuous. Already I can see 40 ahead of me. I can't see behind me at all, but I'm sure that they cover the length of O'Connell Street, and there's no sign of them terminating, of them ending at all. In these cars, although, of course, from this altitude I can't see who's in them, I have a list here which tells me that the cars include cars for the Taoiseach, the chaplains and clergy, members of the government, the Council of State, military members of the Council of Defense, judges of the Supreme and High Court, parliamentary secretaries, ex-ministers, judges of the Circuit Court and justices of the District Court, deputies and senators, secretaries of departments, the chief state solicitor, and some other army and guard officers. Well, this is the cortege as it stays now, as it is now. A line of mostly black cars between this mass of people, though many of the people on the Prairie side of O'Connell Street are now beginning to move away and possibly go back towards their lunch places or to their work. I have one last thought. When people who are near to us die, our first thoughts are usually, what more could I have done for him while he lived? It seems to me that if the nation or we individually feel that more might have been done for the comfort and the good of these men, then nationally and individually we do have a chance to help now, and perhaps a greater incentive, both for those who are left behind by these men and also for all their comrades serving with the 9th Brigade in the Congo. Back to Carl Jones.
As the cortege nears Parnell Square, followed by the long line of black cars carrying the mourners, the crowd in the lower end of O'Connell Street towards O'Connell Bridge starts to melt away. A few moments ago, the top of the CIE kiosk at the foot of Nelson Pillar, and indeed the pillar itself, were black with people. They were almost pushing each other off the side. And in fact, some people were trying to invade the tops of the great station wagons on which the TV cameramen have taken their vantage point. But now, as I say, they're melting away. Many people, civil servants, people in business and industry, were given time off especially to be present at this sad but this great occasion. Now, their time is up. They're going back to their places of employment. Still, the long line of mourners' cars comes around the corner from Bachelor's Wharf and heads up towards Parnell Street and Parnell Square, where at North Frederick Street, a motorcycle escort of honor will take over from the marching escort of honor and will then go with the cortege to the cemetery at Glasnevin. The slow march pace will cease at this point at North Frederick Street, and the cortege will proceed at approximately 20 miles per hour to the cemetery, where John Ross will be waiting to come in at an appropriate time with a report on the final ceremonies. And now, back finally to P.P. O'Reilly of the GPO, who will return you to the continuity in studio.
Well, thank you, Carl Jones. As we leave these vantage points, Carl Jones facing the General Post Office and myself on top of the portico, the long funeral procession of mourners and friends, of all those people who represent Ireland in every shape of its life, that this long cortege is still slowly moving with a mere few yards between each car along the length of O'Connell Street. Many of the crowds many of the people who have filled this street have now, as Carl Jones has said already, decided to leave, but still there are 10 and 15 deep on either side of this short, narrow processional route. Little remains for me to say now except that I feel that the city of Dublin and those who have come into the city from the country have paid a last and a very fitting tribute to these men of Ireland, the 9 men who died in the Congo in the cause of world peace and order.
The cortege is now passing the wall, the front wall of Glasnevin, and is led by the colour training camp band, which you can hear playing the funeral march. There was a long hold-up when the funeral cortege arrived here at Glasnevin. When it came round the corner from Crossguns Bridge, there was a hold-up of about 20 minutes, and during that time, the mourners' cars came off the side behind the crowd and all stopped outside the gate, and the mourners are now in around the graveside. While we were waiting for the cortege here, the sky was very overcast, but just at the last moment, suddenly and most dramatically, a ray of sunlight burst through the western sky. And now, passing me, is the Guard of Honour with arms reversed, a colour party, and right below where I'm standing now, the Congo division. Congo representatives led by Captain James Fowley are passing in their blue United Nations berets. And the colour party is just ahead of them. The route is lined, the centre of the road is lined with an escort, a Guard of Honour, standing with arms reversed and bowed heads. Well, now the number 1 Army band, I beg your pardon, the colour training camp band, is now approaching the main gate of the cemetery. And in a moment, they will be turning right and breaking off, and the funeral procession proper will enter the gates of the cemetery. Well, now on my left is coming out the Land Rover, drawing the trailer on which is the body of Lieutenant Easton. Behind it, the great Matador truck. The Land Rover pulling the first trailer is full of wreaths. There are wreaths also at the head of Lieutenant Easton's coffin. And on the coffin lies his sword and his cap. The coffins are covered by the national flag and the flag of the United Nations. Now the first Matador truck is coming up. Marching in slow time. And there, on the first Matador truck, on the coffins along with the wreath, are the berets of the 2 dead soldiers. Now the band has formed up opposite the gate of the cemetery, and the Guard of Honour is just level with the cemetery gate now. The second Matador draws level with me. Behind the ceremonial route there's a very, very large crowd. There are people sitting on the wall. And although these coffins have passed through a city that was bedecked with flags at half-mast, here at Glasnevin Cemetery there is only in sight one flag at half-mast on a big mill over in the background. a very large crowd. And looking down the road to the left there towards Crossguns Bridge, I can see that the roadway is solid with people. Up at the other end, on the Finglas end, a solid mass of people too, and cars drawn up, stretching as far as the eye can see. It's very cold here at Glasnevin today. It's very, very cold. A cold, bitter wind, and the ground underfoot is cold too. Now, the third Matador truck draws level. Again, on the coffins, along with the wreaths, and lying across the colours are army caps, webbing belts. The last Matador truck is drawing up now, and behind it are Land Rovers with trailers full of leaves. And behind the flower deck trailers come the Army Chief of Staff. Now, as the last Matador passes the Guard of Honor, they salute. The Archbishop of Dublin has vested in the cemetery chapel. He is wearing a white mitre and is vested in black and gold-embroidered coat. He is attended by several priests and by students of the Diocesan College of Clonliffe. The trucks are now passing through the gate of the cemetery. 3 have gone in so far. 1 is still outside. The Archbishop of Dublin has come from the chapel and is waiting. He is preceded by a cross-bearer and an acolyte. When the Land Rover and the 4 Matador trucks have come through the gate, the last truck will stop, and the Archbishop will then perform the ceremony, which begins with the antiphon, those beautiful words which start, "I am the resurrection and the life, saith the Lord." And round the open graveside, the mourners are waiting. They all came in, as I told you, ahead of the cortege. In the background, army officers, dispatch riders with white helmets. In the foreground, the mourners themselves, standing on the cold, sad ground of Glasnevin Cemetery this day. If crowds can give comfort, The relatives of the men who died at Niemba are surely comforted today, because they are not here at Glasnevin Cemetery. They are not alone. And we are all here to meet the young men who 3 months ago traveled so far to die before the eyes of all the world so significantly, and who are then brought that long journey back again, home again here to Ireland, to their burial here in Glasnevin on this misty, sad afternoon. The place of the burial is a new plot beside the regular army plot. And here, the army has buried its dead for nearly 40 years. Beside the Congo men in the old army plot are 210 officers and men of the Irish army who went before them. And now I think at the gate, His Grace the Archbishop of Dublin is about to perform the ceremony. And now he begins the antiphon. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Israel. He has visited his people and wrought their redemption. He has raised up a scepter of salvation for us among the posterity of his servant David, according to the promise which he made by the lips of holy men that have been his prophets from the beginning. Salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all those who hate us. So he would carry out his merciful design towards our fathers by remembering his holy covenant. He had sworn an oath to our father Abraham that he would enable us to live without fear in his service, delivered from the hands of our enemies, passing all our days in holiness and approved in his sight. And thou, my child, wilt be known for a prophet of the Most High, going before the Lord to clear his way for him. Thou wilt make known to his people the salvation that is to release them from their sins. Such is the merciful kindness of our God, which has bidden him come to us like a dawning from on high, to give light to those who live in darkness, in the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace.
Thank you.
the Archbishop sprinkles the coffin with holy water. He is attended by several priests and by students of the Staff College of Clonliffe. And shortly he will begin the concluding prayer of this very brief ceremony here at the gate.
Et minus indicat in tentationem, apporta imperis, requies tantum pace, Domine exaudi orationem meam, Dominus vobiscum, et cum spiritus tuo, oremus, baptismus Domine, hanc cum service tuus sunt misericordiam, et factorum suorum, in tenus non citianticem, Titiam in votis tenuerem voluntatem, et sicut hic eos vera fides, iunc fidelium turmi, vita illis, eos tua miseratio, societ angelicis cori, per Christum Dominum nostrum. Requiem aeternam done eius Domini.
And there, the Archbishop is finishing the concluding prayer in which he asks the pardon of God for the men who died at Niemba and a place for them in the society of the angelic choir.
Anime eorum, ad anime omnium fidelium defunctorum, per misericordiam Dei requies tantum pace.
And now, in the background, you can hear the noise of the truck which has been going on all through that ceremony. The relatives have taken up their positions along one side of the open grave. Each group of mourners was brought to the graveside by an army officer. And next to them are grouped the members of the government, headed by the Taoiseach, Mr. Lemaire, the Taoiseach, Mr. McEntee, the Minister for Finance, Dr. Ryan is there, the Minister for Defence, Mr. Boland, the Minister for Agriculture, Mr. Smith, the Minister for Education, Dr. Hillary, and I also noticed members of the Afro-Asian Society standing behind the members of the government. And with them, there's a large number of Dáil deputies and senators. The only colour in the sombre scene here today in the cemetery is provided by the military attachés from the different diplomatic missions and by the members of the corporation, the blue robes trimmed with black and green. And beyond them again are the diplomatic people and the army chiefs. The firing party has now taken its place in front. Behind them in a single line are 5 young soldiers and an officer, Captain Dan Crowley, comrades of the dead soldiers who brought their bodies back home from the Congo. And now the Land Rover bearing the coffin of Lieutenant Gleeson is approaching the graveside. And here the liturgical ceremony is over and military ceremony takes its place. And as we watch with members of the families of the dead man, we wonder, who was this Lieutenant Captain Gleason? And Captain Jack Miller is here to tell us.
I first met Kevin Gleason in the Phoenix Park, a mud-spattered figure, tall, lithe, and wiry. He smiled a beaming wide smile, and a lock of hair fell on his perspiring brow. "This cross-country racing isn't good for the heart," said he. Yet for years afterwards, whenever the soldiers and running togs were slogging it out across the wintry fields, Kevin Gleason was there. That was typical of the man. He was cheerful, he was respected. Ask any of his friends, especially in the old 7th Battalion of Collins Barracks, Dublin, where he began his army career. Ask the 11th Field Engineers SCA or the 2nd Field Engineer Company why their unit is a happy and efficient one, and they'll tell you one of those reasons was Kevin Gleason. Few officers got to know the men under them quicker or better. At summer camp, we laughed at the way he sang lively Irish songs in a loud sergeant major voice. 34 verses of the old bog road wouldn't be too much for him. And always he smiled. No wonder we called him the Glee. He was the friendliest of men. And a good family man. He loved all children, and his comrades still speak of the way he adopted and fostered Negro children in the Congo. A survivor of the ambush says, "We all loved Lieutenant Gleason. He was a wonderful, friendly man." It was with this same friendliness that he approached the Belubas on the roadside south of Niemba. His gallant action while wounded, in covering his comrades as they took cover, makes him the first martyr of our modern army. He will be missed by his wife, his little daughter, and his family.
And now there will be 2 more volleys. The firing party reloads again. And that is the last 3 volleys. And as those volleys cracked out over the cemetery here, the ray of sunshine that I told you about has faded too. And now it's a very grey, grim, and melancholy afternoon here. Now the trumpeters will sound. The trumpeters will sound the last post and go to ballet. All the army officers present come to attention. And they salute. for the ballet, after the last post, the sounding of the note of hope. Well, I don't suppose that anywhere else in this whole country is the grey Novemberness of this day so marked as it is here in Glasnevin. All around us, the memory of great men and women, some of them patriots, poets, many of them just plain ordinary people like ourselves. They seem to hover over the gravestones. The saddest part of today's ceremony is here, that these men from the Congo died so young and so tragically. Now, outside the open grave is the Land Rover with Lieutenant Gleason's body on it, the other trucks drawn closely up behind it. There's very little space on these walks. They're narrow, in between the cypress trees. The mourners still stand in a sad circle round the grave. Everybody here is thinking the same thing that I'm thinking now about these men of Niemba, especially here at Glasnevin. The bodies of millions of Irishmen who died fighting are in foreign graveyards in Belgrade, the tip of South America. But no man can contribute more to any cause of his life, and no cause on earth can be finer than the one that these men died for, peace among the nations of the world. They were, as their coffins stand in front of us now, we think of it, they were the first Irishmen to die in this cause. Somehow when you begin to think about it that way, it makes you feel that their sacrifice was really for us, and that they made it so that we and our children and their children can live. There is a most tremendous solemnity about this whole occasion here today. A funeral is always a solemn event, but this one is particularly solemn because of the participation in it, of the emotion and feel of it, of all the people here. And now, apparently, some barrier has been taken down, and crowds which were held in the background are coming round the grave. And the Army liaison officers who have been assigned to the various families of mourners are beginning to lead them away. And at the moment here at Glasnevin, there will be nothing very much more to tell you. We have seen the end of the liturgical ceremony, and with the reveille came properly the end of the military ceremony. And so, here at Glasnevin Cemetery, we return you to the studios.